No one gave me a heads up about that house or the jerk who lived there before I moved in. Although to be fair, I probably would have moved in anyway. The rent was right and the location was good. Still, it might have been nice to know. I think it was Shakespeare who said, "The good that we do is often interred with our bones, but the prank phone calls that assholes make live after them." Well, maybe not exactly, but something pretty close to that. I moved into this spacious house down on Old Bridge Road a couple of months ago, on a cold April morning, and the first person I met was my next-door neighbor, a man a few years older than me named Tony. "Cold morning, huh, neighbor?" he said, and then he helpfully mimicked shivering to further drive the point home. We were standing on our respective porches, and Tony was grinning at me, ruddy-faced and bundled up head to foot in Land's End and LL Bean gear. Yeah, sure it is, I guess. For most of my adult life, I've lived and worked in the city, and so the phenomenon of having a grown man come up to me and grin at me and just start talking was novel. Novel and a little uncomfortable. He stuck out his hand. I stared at it. "I'm Tony," he said, "your new neighbor. Put her there." And so I did. The first sign I had that something a little fishy was going on in my new hood came a few weeks later. It was a little after midnight, and I was binging on The Unbreakable Kimmy Schmidt when I heard the slightly irritating putter of a motor scooter go past my house, for what I realized was the third or fourth time. I looked out my window and saw a guy in a white denim jacket with something airbrushed in blue and pink on the back, wearing a big red helmet and scooting down the road past my house on a red scooter. He got to the end of the block, turned around, and scooted back the other way. I was sort of enthralled by the stupidity of it all, so I watched for a few minutes as he tootled to the end of the street, did a U-turn, and went back the other way. Past a certain point, though, entertaining stupidity turns into worrisome behavior, and I started to get concerned he might be some kind of creep, stalking a woman in the neighborhood or looking for a pet to steal or something. I had no reason to believe that whatever he was doing involved me. I don't really have enemies. I'm the kind of dude who likes to binge watch Kimmy Schmidt at midnight. No angry former lovers, no current lovers. I just moved into the neighborhood, so there haven't been any disputes with the neighbors. Tony, for example, seemed to like me just fine. I was absolutely sure that whatever on God's green earth was going on had nothing at all to do with me. That was when the driver stopped right in front of my house, looked up and saw me in the window. He immediately dismounted his scooter, extended his right arm high in the air with his middle finger very theatrically raised, and flipped me off for a solid minute before remounting his scooter and puttering off into the ghastly night. The fuck, I thought. I shrugged. I did what anyone would do in my situation. Finished up season 2 of Kimmy Schmidt and went to bed. A couple of weeks later, I heard the unmistakable whiny, dismal drone of a scooter going back and forth outside my window again. This time, I had just managed to doze off. After the first incident, I had been having a little trouble sleeping. Although I was enough of a grown-up not to be unduly unnerved by the antics of someone who I assumed must be some kind of disconsolate jackass, I had been noticeably physically tenser around bedtime. I would spend a long time tossing and turning and clenching my jaws and grinding my teeth and alternating between feeling scared and foolish and angry. The whine of the little red scooter startled me awake. I bustled over to my bedroom window and threw it open like Scrooge on Christmas morning. I yelled out into the night, "What do you want?" I had no sooner opened the window than the rider came to a stop at the curb in front of my house, dismounted his scooter, and looked up at me. Directly at me. There was now no room for doubt that this was deeply personal for him. He was wearing the same stupid white denim jacket and the same stupid helmet. He stood with his arms crossed like some kind of badass movie villain and stared up at my window through his visor. "Oh, so now you're home, huh, asshole? Now you fucking answer when someone has a delivery for you," he yelled. "What are you even talking about? What delivery, moron?" I was vaguely aware that some lights had started to turn on up and down the street, including Tony's bedroom light. I couldn't count exactly how many people I was waking up making a splashy late-night scene with a schmuck on a scooter, and to be honest, I didn't want to know. I just wanted this to be over. "Pizza delivery, shitbird," he yelled back, and gestured to his scooter, which I noticed for the first time was tricked out with a basket that was stacked with pizza boxes. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 boxes I counted. I didn't order any pizzas. You're confused. I clenched my jaw tight and choked back something about how he was possibly stupid too or insane. I'm not confused, you stupid asshole. You're gonna be sorry. You're deeply confused. I'm shutting my window. Go away. I shut my window. He kept staring up. Same stupid denim jacket. Same stupid helmet. Was he going to flip me off again? Of course he flipped me off again. He flipped me off and yelled something, although I couldn't hear what he was yelling, because I had already turned on an old Nirvana Pixies playlist up on Spotify, and was hunting around for a Xanax so I can get back to sleep. This was all getting seriously out of hand. The next morning, I realized just how out of hand it was getting when I took a step onto my front porch and stepped onto a gooey, greasy-soaked pizza box. To be more accurate, I stepped on a pile of 5 gooey, greasy, rotten-smelling pizza boxes. My foot went right through the soggy boxes, and before I was able to jerk it up, my left cappuccino-colored Cole Haan loafer was slimy from pizza grease, melted cheese, and what I realized with immediate distaste was a generous helping of anchovies. The smell hit me so hard I almost puked up my chocolate peanut butter protein shake. I'm gonna kill that fucking jackass, whoever he is, I yelled at no one in particular. Even though I wasn't yelling at anyone in particular, someone answered. Looks like you're having a bit of trouble, said Tony. I looked at him. He frowned salaciously, my old pal Tony. Yes, Tony, I said through gritting teeth. I'm having a bit of trouble. Yep, he said. Yep, I agreed and nodded curtly and stepped back inside to change my shoes and pants. Work sucked. I was wearing my second favorite pair of shoes and wrinkled khakis, and I was convinced that the noisome grease and stinkfish concoction had somehow permeated my clothes and clung to me after I changed. This made social interactions awkward, and I realized as I walked past 2 of our interns and they wrinkled their noses and whispered something to each other and giggled that my mantra of "it's all in your head, bro," just wasn't reassuring me anymore. At a few minutes before 3 in the afternoon, I suddenly felt weak in the legs and clammy. A convulsive mix of anxiety, embarrassment, and the phantom stench drove me into the bathroom where I puked up the Trader Joe's banh mi bowl I had eaten for lunch. When I said I was going home a little early, I don't think I was imagining the relief on the faces of everyone in our small, poorly ventilated office. At about 6, there was a knock on my door. I was upstairs at the time, sipping ginger ale and languidly scrolling through Facebook. I'd made the mistake of making several posts about my mysterious nocturnal pizza boy tormentor, and was now in the position of having to deal with lighthearted jibes from asshole friends, one of whom had dubbed my new Bate Noir Ghost Rider, and kept asking me when could we expect the big reveal where he yanked off his scooter helmet and revealed the flaming, shrieking skull beneath. The jokes had been mildly amusing at first, but I wasn't in a laughing mood anymore. So there was this knock on my door. I felt my jaw tense up. I felt the muscles of my arms go hard. I'm a mild-mannered guy, but I keep in shape, and I wasn't scared of some skinny little dipshit in a spray-painted denim jacket. I'd played high school lacrosse. I grabbed the first weapon I saw, which was a green and blue plaid umbrella from the umbrella stand in the corner of my bedroom. I rammed it against the palm of my hand like it was a club. I muttered, "All right, motherfucker," and I stormed down my steps and flung open my front door and came within a split second of braining Tony with my umbrella. Tony was holding a bottle of Bulliet bourbon and looked apologetic. "I think maybe I should tell you something about the guy who used to live here," he said, "because I think the kid who keeps bothering you might actually be looking for him, not you." I shrugged, I nodded, I invited him in. I got us 2 tumblers and Tony poured the drinks, and then Tony told me the tale of Trevor Fitzgerald. Tony Fitzgerald, to paraphrase The Big Lebowski, Tony began, was almost certainly the biggest asshole to ever live in this particular burb, which places him high on the list of biggest assholes worldwide. Trevor Fitzgerald had been an abrasive, pompous yet crass young lawyer who had moved in on a freezing cold day in December or January and quickly became the Scrooge of the neighborhood. Trevor found myriad ways, both grand and petty, to torment his neighbors. He revved the already loud engine of his jet black Porsche Cayenne, vanity plate, law god, much too loudly and for much too long at every opportunity. He threatened to sue neighbors who didn't keep their lawns acceptably pristine. Despite being a very single man and an avowed new atheist, He put up such an enormous garnish and overly illuminated Santa Claus around Christmas time that his neighbors had to threaten him with legal action. He said he just thought it was funny to bust balls a little. But the relevant Trevor Fitzgerald story, the salient point, as T. Fitzgerald Esquire himself might have put it, was the time he got the pizza boy killed. Apparently and unsurprisingly, one of Trevor's great passions in life was fucking with people by making prank phone calls. For example, he once got the SWAT team to show up at the house of some other young executive-level asshole 2 suburbs over who had pissed him off in his Call of Duty campaign. Late one night, a clearly besotted Trevor had spent almost 30 minutes regaling an increasingly nervous, clammily uncomfortable Tony with that story. Every time that son of a bitch talked to me, I needed a shower right after, Tony said. The worst thing Trevor did, though, was get a pizza boy killed. On a dark and stormy night, Trevor had pranked another online gaming bro by sending him 5 large anchovy pizzas. This other guy, from what Tony could piece together, had been bragging all week during their gaming sessions about this woman he was going to be banging, so Trevor, being a real sweetheart, decided to fuck with him a little in the pettiest, laziest, least original way possible. Trevor gave very specific instructions to the order taker, saying, "Look, I'm a little hard of hearing, and I've had issues getting pizza before, so please, make as much of a racket as you need to, and do not stop until I open the door, okay?" The order taker took all of this in good faith and gave the delivery boy the instructions before he left. Anthony said, "So this poor kid Charles, I think, or Chuck, something like that, he gets on his scooter and he toodles over to this guy's condo, and he rings the bell and doesn't get an answer. So then he yells, 'I got your pizza,' and maybe hears like a muffled voice telling him to go away or something. But he thinks this guy is hard of hearing and really wants his pizza, so he leans on the doorbell." Understand that this whole story is just Trevor hypothesizing to me later about how it might have gone down. And as he's telling me this story about how he imagines the kid's delivery went, he's laughing so hard he's about to cry, even though he knows the kid ended up dying. I could have punched him right in the goddamn mouth. I don't understand how the prank got him killed, though. Did the guy shoot him or something? Mistake him for an intruder? I'm getting to that. So finally the guy comes to the door, and this is the part Trevor thinks is the funniest, because his coitus had just gotten interrupted, and so he's obviously horny and sweaty and furious. Calls the kid every name in the book, tells him he got pranked and to get the fuck out. But see, the kid's pizza parlor had a policy that if you don't get paid for your pizzas, you're in deep shit. Pizza delivery is a shitty way to make a living. I should know. It's how I made beer money in college. So the poor kid tries to hold his ground, says somebody is going to have to pay him for the pizza. So that's when it dawns on this horny asshole who must have pranked him in the first place, and so he gives the kid Trevor's name and address and says, "If anyone owes you money, it's that cuck," and slams the door on him. The rest you could probably guess. It's a stormy night, I said, so the kid is trying to ride his scooter in the driving rain way across town, and he's pissed off, probably super amped up, and somehow or another he gets killed, right? Slides off the road in the rain, falls down a steep embankment, lands wrong and breaks his neck. It's actually pretty hard to kill yourself in a scooter accident. I'd have to say Charles or Chuck or whatever was a pretty unlucky young man. Yeah, I said. So maybe he has a brother or a friend or something who still thinks Trevor lives here? That's my guess. Maybe if you can find some way to safely get the kid who's doing this to come look at your ID or something, prove you're not Trevor. It's worth a shot. This is getting out of hand. Yeah, well, you seem like a good guy. Good luck to you. This is some creepy bullshit, my friend. We polished off our drinks and I locked the door behind Anthony. I had an uneasy dream that night. The same dream more or less several times, and each time I woke up sweaty and clenching my sheets and screaming. In the dream, I was a schmucky pizza delivery guy named Chuck. Schmucky Chucky was how the other characters in the dream referred to me. I had a little red scooter and hair that wouldn't quite stay out of my eyes, and I wore this god-awful white denim jacket that I thought was fleek as fuck. I got dispatched with 5 anchovy pizzas on what turned out to be a crank call, and then, as I was driving furiously to go get my money from the prick who had made the prank call, I lost control of my silly red scooter in the rain, and I felt myself falling off the wet scooter seat and tumbling down the cold, wet embankment, and I could feel every piece of broken glass and every piece of gravel until I woke up in a cold sweat. Halfway through take 4 of my dream sequence, Right as I was pulling my little red scooter onto the street to go get my money from the son of a bitch who had placed the prank call, I heard a furious pounding on my front door. "Hey, wake up. Someone owes me money for my 5 goddamn stinking anchovy pizzas and I'm not leaving without it." I sat bolt upright in bed, a clammy, sweaty mess. I ran my hands through my hair. "Hey Trevor, open the door, man. Be a man and come to your door and give me my money." I had a sudden, ghastly realization. A kid like Chucky, and his name was Chucky. I was sure of it now, Schmucky Chucky wouldn't have anyone in his life who was devoted enough to get vengeance for him from beyond the grave. Probably plenty of people missed him, a few people cried, but nobody was going to don the delivery boy's uniform and search for justice for him. The last thing in the world I wanted to do was open the door, because I suddenly knew what I was going to find there. But I wanted this to end. More than that, I wanted that poor sad sack to be able to find some peace, if that was possible. So I shrugged. I forced myself to stand up. I made my legs carry me over to my dresser, where I willed trembling hands to pick up my wallet. And then I made the trip down the stairs and to my front door where Chuck was still howling threats and imprecations. I was pretty glad I stopped by the ATM earlier in the week, because if at all possible, I wanted to give that poor bastard his money. I took a deep breath and threw my front door open. I noticed that the driving rain was falling and that all the streetlights had gone out, rendering the night outside my front door a bright black void. I saw a white denim jacket with a Chinese dragon airbrushed on it, but the jacket had seen better days. It was torn and ripped and burnt, and through the tears I could see patches of abraded, necrotizing flesh drooping off of bone that jutted and angled in weird directions because they were broken. Chuck's head was hanging straight down and to the left. He was shivering. His helmet was off. I dreaded what I'd see when he turned around. "Chuck?" I said softly, but that was all I got out before he spun around and dove a scalding hot pizza that smelled of stale grease and rotten fish right into my face. It was like one of those scenes out of an old movie where the lovable rascal hits the pompous douchebag in the face with a pie. Only this was a garbage pie, and the lovable rascal was a bloodthirsty revenant. "You owe me $77.18, asshole. Plus I want a tip for once." The shambling, reanimated remains of Schmucky Chucky were incredibly strong. Between the smell of his rotting flesh and the stench of the grease and fish, I was struggling not to get sick when he tossed me casually to the ground and jumped on top of me, pinning my shoulders down with his bony, jagged knees. I'm not Trevor, I was yelling, spitting out pizza grease and rancid cheese between syllables. The cheese was dripping on my face, burning and blinding me, and I could barely get my hands up high enough to claw it desperately off my face, away from my nose and eyes. Bullshit. I'm sick of being fooled, bro. I don't give a shit who you are. All I know is I need my fucking money before I can go back. I'm not gonna have the old man who owns the place yell at me again because our stupid, incompetent fucking Debbie answering the phone let herself get pranked. I'll pay, but you have to let me get my wallet. No more tricks, he yelled, punching down hard and hitting me right in the middle of the chest. I felt the breath swoosh out my lungs and saw stars. For several seconds I couldn't talk, couldn't catch my breath. Not so much to say now, huh, he said, eyeing my kitchen. I saw his eyes fixate on my knife rack. Both eyes were grotesquely bloodshot, and the right eye was mostly drooping by its stalk down from the socket. But he seemed to see just fine, and a big goofy grin played upon his face when he saw my big, black-handled butcher knife. The grin was almost endearing, but I knew there was nothing endearing about Chuck's plan for me. Flesh drooped down from his face like melted cheese as he grinned at me. He shoved off on top of me, kicked me once hard in the ribs, and then as I doubled over, still breathless, he staggered towards my kitchen. I felt close to blacking out and had to gasp in several harsh lungs full of breath just to try to yell at him. What came out was a hoarse, raspy whisper. "Hey, Chuck, here's my wallet." I took the wallet I'd grabbed from my dresser and threw it feebly between his feet. He glared down at it, dubiously. "Open it up. Take what you need," I wheezed. "I want to make it right." He reached down. "There'd better be enough money in here for 5 16-inch pies and a tip," he bellowed, and I realized with a gut-wrenching spasm that his blood and guts were dripping onto my kitchen floor now and his body decomposing in front of me. Chucky opened the wallet and took out 4 $20 bills and a 10. I'm taking a fucking $13 tip, asshole, and for all the aggravation you caused me. Take it. Just leave me alone. Then he looked down at my driver's license, surprised, and remarked, "Hey, you're not Trevor. You're just some guy." "Well, fuck you. I'm taking the money anyway. Somebody's got to pay for these pizzas so I can rest." "Sure," I wheezed. "Okay, that's fine. I want to be fair to you." "Yeah, fair's fair," he muttered, cramming the money into his jacket pocket. He looked with some measure of disgust at the pizza pies congealing on the floor next to me, and then out the door towards his scooter. "Hey, I have to be honest, bro. It took me a minute or two to get all the way out here, and I'm not too sure those pizzas are so good anymore. You don't really want them, do you?" "Nah," I said. "I just want you to get what's fair for you and for both of us to move on." "Yeah, that's cool," he said. "That's cool." His voice was getting weaker, and the skin on his face was beginning to droop like the cheese on top of a hot slice of pizza being pulled from a pie. I was in a pretty big hurry for him to leave. By now, most of whatever energy was animating him seemed to have drained from his body, and he ambled to the door much more slowly than he had burst in. Finally, he was out on my porch, and I shut the door behind him with a sigh of relief. I heard him sigh too, and a few minutes later, when I finally heard his dumb little scooter start up for the last time, I cleaned up the pizza on my floor and went to bed.